Can you still hear me?
Shannon, we can hear you, but we don't see your screen.
Can you see the screen now?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, good afternoon and welcome to Scoring QSM Grant Proposals webinar. My name is Dr. Shannon LaFauna. I'm currently the QSM chairman and have been writing and scoring grants for the past 16 years. Today I have 3 panelists joining me, and as of right now, Dr. Nixon is not, hasn't been able to log in for some computer problems, but she's working on it, so she'll probably join in as we continue with our webinar. And then Jean May Brett and Nathan Cotton. I appreciate them helping me with the webinar today. All 3 will be able to chime in when needed and will answer any questions provided in the question board. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone that has joined us today. I realize that this means taking time out of your busy schedules, not only to view the webinar, but also to score the proposals, and we appreciate it. One of the responses to QSM meetings was to provide our teachers with a grant writing workshop. So on August 12th, we provided a QSM grant writing. There were 134 people who registered, and of the 134, 43 viewed the webinar. The webinar has been recorded and posted on YouTube, and so far there have been Brenda?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I had to go to my phone. I lost internet.
Okay. I hear sounds like some shuffling. I figure you joined on. Thanks for joining us. So far, there have been 698 views of the webinar on YouTube. Also wanted to remind everyone, I know Brenda had emailed everyone a copy of the rubric as well as this PowerPoint in case you wanted to print it at a time or review it ahead of time. But I also have it saved on the downloads on this webinar, so you should be able to pull it up through the webinar link as well. As part of the response from the QSM Council in regards to making the rubric less subjective, there were some changes that was made to the rubric, hoping to be able to have scoring a little bit easier. So I appreciate everyone joining us today again, and we're going to go ahead and get started. Today we're going to review some sample grant sections of both math and science QSM grants, and we're going to be able to evaluate and score those sections. The first section to score is the student population. The student population rubric section is on the right of the screen. So I would like you to look at 1A, total number of students on the left-hand portion. Notice that it's 30. Then I would like you to look to review 1B. Looking in this, is it okay for some components to have 0 next to the number? If you notice urban, suburban, gifted and talented, and ESL, notice there are zeros. And it is okay for it to have some areas 0. Notice that the total number of students is 30, and she has 30 students in the rural portion. So therefore, urban and suburban does not need to have any numbers in there. Now, if they did not account for all students in those, then yes, you would take away some points. They do not have to have special ed. number. They do not have to have a gifted number. They do not have to have an ESL number because they may not have those students in their classroom. I also would like to make a note that QSM grants cannot be given to a teacher who teaches only special education students. So if all the students were listed in the special ed or gifted and talented section, then you would have to contact Brenda and check disqualified on the rubric and not score the rest of the grant. The next section on the student population is section 1C. In this section, teachers need to provide additional information other than what was already given in sections 1A and 1B. And in order to help teachers, we had provided them with examples of information that they can provide in the rubric. So if you notice, see on the right-hand side, it says challenges they face math science as a result of demographics, grandparents as caregivers, graduation rate, single-parent families. Those people that actually went on the webinar for grant writing, learning to write a QSM grant, I've actually showed them the different websites they can go on to get those or that type of data if they don't know it already. We also want to make a point that sometimes in this narrative section, it contains identifiable information such as school name, teacher name, school district, and that is a disqualification as well. Anything that identifies the school or the teacher is an automatic disqualification. So if you would have this in this section, you would contact Brenda and let her know, and then check the disqualified section on the rubric, and you don't have to score the rest of the grant. In scoring this section, I would score, I don't know if everybody had a chance to read C. I would score this section 1A, a 2. Notice that the teacher gives 2 sentences of extra information on C. However, the 2 sentences do not pertain to her class in particular. It sounds as if the teacher can be describing any class population, any classroom population. However, the information does provide one aspect of additional information in regards to his or her classroom population, and therefore I would score this section 1C a 1. Make note that for each section you score less than the maximum number on the rubric, you must write a reason why you scored less. A sample comment for this section could sound like, the narrative provided very little additional information about the population. The information provided could have described any classroom. This is another sample of the student population. And based on what we just reviewed, I want you to go ahead and review sections 1A and 1B. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to have Nathan set you up a poll, and I want you all to score based on the one we just went through. So I'm going to give you a few minutes. Look at the total number of students. Look at each category below it. Make sure they've answered the questions they need to. It's just 1A and B. Nathan, will you go ahead and launch the poll? Thanks. When it looks like everyone has responded, go ahead and close and we'll talk about the responses. Excellent. I definitely would have scored this a 2. All the numbers that needed to be answered, there was some that had 0, but we are not sure that they didn't have any ESL students in there, so we couldn't take any points away from them on some of those other ones. Excellent. Now what I'd like you to do is I would like you to review section. Now I'd like you to review section 1C. I'm going to give you a minute or so. Think about the one that you just read and now read sample 2. Read the rubric on the right-hand side. Nathan, would you launch the poll? When it looks like everyone has scored, go ahead and show responses. I would have given this section, I'm glad to see everybody in the 2 and the 3 area. I would have scored this section a 3. Notice that the proposal added, or the narrative added had some additional information, several attributes in regards to the classroom population. Make note that since the score for this section was awarded the maximum amount, we did not need to provide a comment. However, I would suggest providing positive comments along with negative comments when applicable. For example, a sample comment for this section could have sounded like the applicant did a great job describing their student population by providing a detailed overview of the characteristics of the students he or she teaches on a daily basis. Nathan, would you close the poll? The next section is the goals and objectives. This is what the teachers see when completing a proposal. I told the teachers that they need to focus on student learning and not acquisition of materials. We need to ensure that they have accompanying standards and that the objectives are clearly defined, measurable, time-based, and realistic. Let's look at the goals and objectives for sample number 1. I'll give you a minute to review the first sample and also review the section 2A of the rubric. And of course, if you do not see a goal, a mention of a goal in the narrative, you would score a 0. However, in this case, the applicant listed a goal, but it was for the acquisition of materials and is not for, and it's not educationally significant, meaning not towards an increase in student content or skills. So for that reason, I would score this section a 1. Now review 2B of the rubric. The teacher stated an objective, but it is clearly defined. But is it clearly defined, measurable, time-based, and realistic? Is it aligned to a goal or to the goal? I would score this section a 1. It is aligned to a goal and states by the end of the first semester, but it's definitely not clear on how many ports, what kind of cell, how will it be measured, so forth and so on. Let's look at 2C of the rubric. Notice that the teacher didn't even place a science standard in his or her narrative, didn't mention it, nor didn't give a specific standard. Therefore, you cannot see if the science standard aligns to the concept or to the goal of the objective. Therefore, I would score this section a 0. Remember, each section you score less than the maximum number on that section, you must write a reason why you scored less. So a sample comment could sound something like, the goal of this project is for the acquisition of materials and not geared towards an increase in students' content knowledge or skills. The objective is aligned to the goal, but is not clearly defined. And moreover, there is no evidence of any science standards. Now let's look at sample 2. Just as we did the population area, I'm going to have y'all read sample 2 and read A of the rubric, and I'm going to have Nathan launch the poll. So what I'm going to do is give you a few minutes to read, think about sample 2 and A of the rubric. Nathan, will you launch the next poll? Great job. Is the goal appropriate for the grade level? Is it clearly stated and educationally significant? I would have scored this section a 2. Y'all doing a great job. You may feel that the goal could have been more specific, stating systems of linear equations instead of being something very broad. However, a goal is kind of broad in nature. Now let's go ahead and look at 2B. If you need time to look back at the goals and objectives section, do that. Is the objective clearly defined, measurable, time-based, and realistic? Does it align to the goal? Nathan, will you launch the poll? When it looks like enough people have answered, go ahead and close. And great job. Yeah, awesome. Yes, I would have scored this section a 4. Yes, the objective is clearly defined, measurable, time-based, and realistic, and it does align to the goal. Now let's look at C of the rubric. Nathan, would you go ahead and launch the poll? There is some variation in the numbers. It is hard, again, and it is kind of a little subjective. But in looking at this, Nathan, go ahead and keep it up. Is a specific Louisiana standard, is the specific standard listed? No. So is it correctly identified? Meaning, is it called Common Core? I do notice that when I was reading some of the science standards, they were calling them Common Core for science. And I think it's important that they know the standards that they're supposed to be pulling from. So making sure not only that the standard is listed, a specific standard, to ensure that it's actually aligned to the goal and objective, making sure that it's also called, the appropriate name. I would score this section a 2. So if you were around there, give one, take one, it's where I think I would score. There may be some questions in the poll box I cannot see, but if there's any comments or questions on those even after the webinar that you'd like to discuss, absolutely, we can do that. Nathan, would you close the poll? A comment for this section may include, because we didn't give them their maximum number, the objective is well developed but lacks a specific LSSM standard to ensure alignment to the project objective. By all means, this goal objective looks better than sample 1, but is still missing some parts to it. The next section that would be reviewed is the abstract. The abstract has some of the things that we already seen before, but it's actually just an overview of the goals, objectives, a synopsis of their implementation plan, and some expected student outcomes. We want the teachers to provide an explanation of the content and skills that the students will be learning in the classroom and how that content and skills will be delivered. Notice it's a max of 300 words. So what are we going to do is I'm going to we're going to look at sample 1. I'm going to get you a few minutes to read it. And then I'm going to go back to slide 6. We're going to use the goals and objectives of slide 6. So let's pretend like this would be the goals and objectives for that abstract. Now we're back at the abstract. I want to give you a few minutes to read the rubric at the bottom and what is asked. Did the narrative provide an overview of the goals and objectives? No. Did it provide an implementation plan on what students will do and learn? No. Notice that it's teacher-driven and not student-driven. Did it provide strategies for implementation? No. And was it clear of what will happen in the classroom? Absolutely not. Therefore, I would score this section a 0. And believe it or not, they have proposals that give you narratives like this. So a comment for this section could include, this section is vague and not well developed. It lacks an overview of the goals and objectives, and is teacher driven instead of student driven. Now, I'm going to give you a few minutes to read because this one I'm going to have you score. And do note that we are limited on our poll in how many options I can give you to, I think it's 5. So what I did is where I felt we should be around is where I actually put the numbers. So you won't see 0 to 10. You would either see 5 to 10 or 0 to 5. So what I want you to do is go ahead. I'm going to shut up in a minute. I'm going to get you to read this for a few minutes. And also read the abstract at the bottom one more time and what you're looking for. So let's pretend that the goal of this grant was to improve students' knowledge of forces in motion, and the objective was to assess students on Newton's 3 laws of motion. Now, we're not scoring how good the goal and objective is that I just told you. I want to give you a few minutes to review sample 2 one last time, and I'm going to have Nathan start the poll. Nathan? Thanks. Good. I like seeing next to the 6, 7, and 8. Great job. It said, Nathan, go ahead and keep it up. Did the narrative provide an overview of the goals and objectives? No, it didn't. Did it provide an implementation plan for what students will do and learn? Yes. Did it provide strategies for implementation? Not really. It mentioned an investigation, but it really didn't say cooperative learning, hands-on. We can assume hands-on. It talked a little bit about graphs and data, so you have some math incorporation, but they truly didn't, it wasn't really clear. Is the picture of what will happen in the classroom clear? Mostly, yes. So I would score this section a 7. So I could see everyone is around that, that area, so great job. A comment for this section could include or sound like the abstract provided a clear picture of what will happen in the classroom, but lacks an overview of the goals and objectives and some implementation strategies. Nathan, you can go ahead and close. In this section, you're looking for a description of student needs and areas of weakness that will be addressed. It should include student data that shows the need, that is district data, teacher pre- and post-test on content and skills. We want the most recent data that the teacher has. So if they did a pretest, we want the pretest from this year. And remember, if there's any evidence of use of confidential student data, it's an automatic disqualification. Also, we need to remember that the need needs to correlate to the goals and objectives. So if it's about Newton's three laws of motion, then the pretest should find us a weakness in the student's knowledge, content knowledge or skills of Newton's 3 laws of motion. So now I'd like you to review sample 1 for the rationale section and then review section 4A of the rubric. Notice that the teacher did not mention any specific content or skill weakness of her students. However, she did state a general classroom weakness. Therefore, I would score this section a 1. Now I'm going to go back to slide 6 with the microscopes. I want you to review the goal and objective for this grant. Now review 4B of the rubric. Due to the fact that the rationale is so general, we can state it correlates to almost any goal and objective. However, it could correlate to a lot of goals and objectives. Therefore, I would score this section a 1. Now review 4C of the rubric. And because this section does not mention any assessment data, nor the time in which the assessment was taken, I would score this section a 0. Do note, I'll always give teachers the benefit of the doubt. Many teachers have never written a grant or maybe attended a webinar. So if they try, it looks like they're trying. As you see, I do try to give them at least the 1 point. Will that get them the grant? Absolutely not. But it would look good when they go back to look at the comments that they're not all zeros. So a comment for this section could sound like, this section lacks an identified content or skill weakness based on assessment data and does not truly correlate to the goal and objective. Now it's time for y'all to score. So what I'd like you to do is review sample 2, and I place the goal and objective underneath. Once you read the sample 2, goals and objectives, I'd like you to look at rationale A, 4A, on the rubric. Nathan, will you launch the poll? Again, I won't say this every time, but notice 0 is missing on the poll. It's because we're limited to the number, so I went ahead and put it on the side of the rubric we should score around. Notice the teacher, Nathan, go ahead and keep it up. Notice the teacher stated an area of weakness, but placed a broad concept of measurement. Were the students weak in using tools to actually measure? Were they not proficient in converting measurements? Because the teacher was not specific, it was hard to know if the project would truly increase the measurement scores on the district post-test. So I was going to score this section a 3. Only because they were so broad in general. By all means, this proposal sample was better than the previous proposals sample.
Shannon,
Yes, ma'am.
this is Jean, and I wonder if some of the people who scored a 4 or a 5 might take a moment to put in the chat what they saw that gave it that strength of a score.
They might have not even thought about the concept of measurement being broad. To me, when I read it, it was, okay, what part of measurement? There's so many parts of measurement. How do I know they're actually targeting the right measurement skill was what I was thinking, because it was just so broad. Is anyone putting anything in the chat?
Not at this time. That's okay. You can go on. I was just interested to see.
Me too, because they may see something that I don't see that, and which could definitely have been. So let's go ahead and look at section 4B. And that's why I did say that, you know, we always compare things to the previous ones, and by all means, this one is much better. And I do want people to realize that they don't have to have wordy paragraphs. They are limited to a word amount, and they should be able to get what they want across without being very wordy. So they don't have to have pages and pages of information to be able to answer the rubric questions. We just want them to be very specific and to the point. So now review section 4B on the rubric and the goal and objective at the bottom left. Remember, we're not scoring the goal and objective section. We're just scoring to see if the goal and objective correlate to the rationale.
Shannon, we do have a question from Shauna asking what standards are being targeted for the 4th grade in this sample?
I don't know. I don't know if this is one that I actually pulled from a previous grade or it's one I made up. But that is a great question, because if they did have listed, it's not needed to list, but if they previously listed in the other that it was correlated to a standard, I could see how that could be educationally significant. Maybe why she brought that up. Okay, Nathan, would you launch the poll? This is when I wish we would be in a classroom and we can discuss, because they probably have some good rationale on why they scored a 3, you know, in that area. Does the rationale to me correlate to the goal and objective? And I put yes, I think so. Is it educationally significant? I would say yes. I do understand how Shauna mentioned about the standard, but it wasn't asked in this particular one, but it would help you in understanding and maybe the section before if they had it, if it was correlated. I would have scored this section a 5, but we were all close to the 5. Now let's review section 4C. Nathan, would you launch a poll? The next poll? Good job. The narrative provided a pre-test data, stated the type of test they were using, and when it was given. So I would have scored this section a 5. So everyone was close to that. I think it's great. The comment for this section, since we didn't provide the maximum amount, the rationale provided data proving measurement is a weakness for students and correlated to the grant goals and objectives. However, it lacked a description of the specific weaknesses in measurement to truly know if the grant will increase district post-test measurement scores. Okay, you can close the poll. Is anyone providing any comments or questions? No?
None that we haven't mentioned.
Okay. In the description section, applicants should explain their project by providing a clear description of how they will address their student learning needs and meet identified standards. They should describe learning strategies, instructional materials to be used, and specific activities they will implement to improve students' content knowledge and skills. Now, I only have one of these to look through, so I'm going to go ahead and have y'all, without having a model one to go through, to try to score this on your own. So I'm going to give you a few minutes to read. And I want you to read, this is the rubric for the description section, A. And I'm going to go back one more time. A well-planned project. Nathan, will you launch the poll? The next poll? Good. I would have scored this in the 3-4 range as well. The narrative lacked the time frame for activities and specifically what students will do in each activity. So yeah, it sounded really good, but they were missing some specifics. Now I'm going to get you to review 5B. Nathan, you can go ahead and close. Let me go here. Will you launch the poll? Good. I like to see the 4 because that's probably what I would have scored this section if I was scoring. Yeah, it does mention some of the activities, but it was really vague in exactly what the kids were, the concepts the kids were learning. It talks about a few things. It would have been great to have had it all specific and very clear. I'd also like to have seen if they were using particular type of kit, because I like to see that the budget is mentioned. All the materials that's in the budget is actually mentioned in the narrative to know that what the kids were doing matches the budget. So if there was a kit to be involved, or if I'd like to have seen that as well, but I definitely would have scored a 4. Good. Now let's review 5C. I'm going to go back to the previous slide if y'all want to review it real quick. Nathan, will you launch the poll? Awesome. I'd have scored a 4 as well. To me, the teacher knows the activities she'll be implementing, but doesn't mention much about the strategies. Maybe it would have been good to hear about cooperative grouping, or maybe even mention some of the skills. I would score this section definitely a 4. Now review 5D. Nathan, would you launch the poll? Say the proposal did show students' weakness in content area of electricity using a pretest and provided the specific standard for electricity. How would you score 5D? Go ahead and leave them a few minutes because I mentioned that after. So let's think that they did provide pretest information with a weakness in electricity and specific standard for that. Okay. With that extra information, I would have scored that section a 4. It is hard without having that ahead of time. A sample comment for this section could state the applicant provided a list of activities that would be implemented based on pretest data. However, the applicant lacks specific implementation strategies and skills. Good job. The next section is evaluation and assessment. Applicants need to write a plan that proves they will know if their grant goals and objectives would be met, and how would they know if they'd be met. Notice here I put being specific on district made or teacher made, multiple choice, explaining, describing the test. How we know if it's subjective or not if they don't explain their test. If it's constructive response, then it's more subjective. How are they going to exactly compare their student data? We need to also ensure that they do not include state standardized test scores, because it will not be, the scores will not be in enough time for them to evaluate. The grant, Brenda would need that information before. So, again, I don't have two evaluation assessment samples. This is the only one, so I'm going to go ahead and we're going to score this without having a model. So I'm going to give you a few minutes to review the sample. And I'm going to also get you to look at the rubric under A. Go ahead and launch the poll. I'm assuming people are still responding. This is interesting. I would have scored this section a 2, and I'm going to tell you why. The narrative does not provide a description of the test or the rubric. Is it multiple choice, fill in a blank, constructed response, true, false, whatever. Nor does it state if it will be teacher made or gotten from the district. Makes a difference. So that's the reason why I would have scored it a 2. Let's look at 6B. Nathan, go ahead and close. Go ahead and launch the poll. That's good. I would have scored this section a 4. The teacher provides a pre-test, a mid-year test, a post-test, and a rubric and target for growth, but does not mention how he or she will compare them for student growth. So that's where I would have hit the 4. I'd like to see maybe some other things that y'all saw on there. Make a note that teachers are not to use, again, the state standardized tests. Scores usually don't come in, remember, for the reports. Now let's look at 6C. Lathan, would you go ahead and launch the poll? Good. I like seeing it around that section because I would have scored this section a 3 because there wasn't enough information about the test to ensure if it was objective in nature. I mean, we can assume, but to truly know, they would have had to have described some of them. Now review, let's review 6D. Nathan, will you launch the poll? Good. I would have scored this section a 4, and 3s are good. That's right next to it. Because the teacher had a pre-test, mid-year test, post-test rubric that would have served as formative in some assessments. However, it would have been clearer if he or she would have stated it. They didn't even state it. It would have been even great to have had some, her to, or he or she to have mentioned some of those little formative ones throughout. It would have actually clearer. So you could have convinced me to a 3. All right, let's go on to the next section. Qualifications. This is very important. We need to make sure that the qualifications of the teachers are relevant to the content and skills and strategies in the proposal, as well as some of the materials that they have listed. We need to ensure that they have a topic, the amount of contact hours, and years of the year of training. We want to make sure that the training is current, as current as possible. Formal and informal education opportunities are accepted. Professional development that they might have experienced, whether it's one day or whether it's like an MSP or a SIP that's been a whole year. College and continuing ed courses that they have taken can increase their competencies. That's also accepted. So as of now, I have 2 samples of qualifications, and I'm going to give you a few minutes to read them. And then we're going to go ahead and score them. This will be the last section that we score. Nathan, I'm going to go ahead and get you to launch 7. Oh, I take it back. Go ahead and let them read 7A real quick. Let's say that the goal and objective that for this grant was the concept of light, and that the applicant budgeted in light waves and false kits. Light waves, false kit. So let's say that the goal and objective was dealing with this area. Nathan, will you launch the poll? Remember, the goal and objective is dealing with the concept of light. Good job. I definitely had, knowing that we don't have the goal and objective to look at, but knowing that it is dealing with light, both of the professional developments are of the nature or the forms that are acceptable for the grant, and they described what they were doing in them, and it also aligned to the light goal. So with that said, I would have definitely given them a 5. Nathan, will you? Yeah, thanks. All right, let's look at B, 7B. And again, the applicant budgeted in a light and waves model false kit. Nathan, will you launch a poll, the next poll? Great. Note you are looking for the date. Remember, it's not listed on the rubric, but you're looking for a date, amount of hours, whether it's credit hours, and it didn't have to be a lot. As long as you know they're able, after that particular professional development or class or seminar, that they're able to implement or use those materials. Or a course taken, let's see, in regards to the content or skills learned. Nathan? No, take it back. No, don't. Sorry, I lost exactly what I wanted to say, but it's okay. Let's go on to the budget section. This is the last section that we're going to score. Above is a little snippet showing a sample of a budget that you would see. We are out of polls, so I'll go ahead and we'll just discuss this section. We could pretend that if we go back to slide 5, I think it's 15. Let's see. Remember the electricity kit? This could be a part of the one for the electricity kit. They have electricity false kit. They have a magnetism false kit. They have the number of items, everything's in. They also have the vendor listed. And they have A. All budgetary items are directly linked to the materials included in description. If that previous slide, the one on electricity, those little activities that were mentioned, if that was part of this grant, then I would have placed a 5. It is directly related to the activities that was in the description. B, all budgetary items are appropriate expenditures for meeting the needs of the students and are aligned to the project goals and objectives. If the goals and objectives for this section were geared toward electricity and magnetism, you would score toward the meeting of the needs, the 5 or the 4, depending on what the exact goals and objectives were. Remember that these items that are budgeted must be an integral part of the project design. If they have something that's in the budget that's not mentioned in the description, then I would have scored something lower in here. Sometimes teachers also use this as, oh, I have $750 and I have $100 left to spend, and they start throwing extra items in there without it being a part of the description. So be careful of that. Also, if the goal and objective maybe only mentioned electricity and you have magnetism things in there, I'd also score lower. Real quick before we conclude, there are several things that automatically disqualify applicants, and one is identifying, if they place identifying information anywhere in their grant, like their name, teacher name, school district, automatically email Brenda, let her know where it's at in the proposal, and you can probably stop scoring unless you hear from her. All students, if all the students in the description, the population area are gifted or special ed, that is also a disqualification. And plagiarism. I've read for several years, and I promise you when you see it, you will know it. It's like you're reading, it's deja vu. You read, it's like, I read this already. And you pull up the other one, and they might change out the numbers or a few words, but it's exactly word for word of another proposal. So if you see this, please even if it's questionable to you, please let Brenda know and have her staff and as well as she to review it and look at it before moving on.
Shannon,
Yes, ma'am.
just to incorporate there, perhaps ask Brenda to say something. It has happened that people have scored 1, 2, or 3 proposals and then gotten to numbers 6 and 7 and found the samples or the repeats, the plagiarism. And although you've already scored those first ones, again, you need to contact Brenda with the numbers that need to be considered as plagiarism and pulled. It does unfortunately happen, correct, Brenda, that sometimes a couple are scored before it's been realized.
Yeah, please let her know which proposals, like Jean said, even if you already scored them, please let her know those proposal numbers. They give you proposal numbers. Let her know the proposal numbers that were the same, even though you already scored them. Absolutely.
Right, and also make sure that, well, one of the things that we try to do is to give teachers, the reviewers, we give the reviewers the teachers from the same schools, because that's usually where the plagiarism occurs. And sometimes it's really not a problem of the individual. They may have given theirs to have someone read over it, and then that person may take that proposal and decide that, you know, they're going to submit it. So that is one thing that we do try to do to, you know, keep that down. And usually we don't have more than 10 in a school that have submitted proposals, so we can catch them that way. And I do have a couple more tips that I would like to share. Is that okay now, Shannon? Can I do that now?
All
okay.
of you. Yes.
Okay. If you come across a disqualification, when you know, okay, there's no sense in scoring this because it's already disqualified, I'll just write disqualified in the very first box, disqualified, and then the reasons why it's disqualified, and that will take care of that, because that's the, you know, you want me to score anything else. And if you've already scored, just go back to that first text box and just write disqualified. And we can see that whenever you don't have a score, but it's nice to know exactly why, and they need to know why theirs was disqualified, so they don't repeat that mistake again. You are welcome to use shorthand as long as we can understand it. So let's say you don't have to have long sentences, but we want to make sure, okay, it may be vague, you know, the description is vague, you know, lacks cohesiveness. You know, as long as we can really understand what you're talking about and it's specific, then that's what it needs to be. But it can be a list. It doesn't have to be all in sentences. It can be a list, as long as we can really grasp what's going on. Let's see. And we also, on those, using any of the state test scores, we're looking at micro project-driven kind of data, and that cannot be picked up by the state scores. You know, we can't tell, did this project actually make a difference in that student learning if it's at that macro state level. That's why we need to have those teacher or district or the tests that are provided for them that would measure whatever they are trying to teach. Because we know that we can't, with $750, we're not going to be able to just impact everything, but we can certainly impact whatever the skills are that they're working on. And that's pretty much. Does anybody else have anything that y'all can think of that we need to ensure we get out there?
About the grants, how they're going to be assigned, because I have on here that they will receive their assignments by today. I don't know if that's changed, and the scoring's to be completed by October 8th, if you kind of want to talk about a little bit about that.
Okay. we're going to start working on them this evening, but you won't, don't expect everything to be completed until tomorrow evening. You should have everything that you need to get you going, and you can start your reviews then. But we're starting all of the assignments today and carry them through tomorrow. So tomorrow evening you should get it. You'll have until that October 8th time. We really impress upon you to, try to get them in by that time, because that's whenever we're going to be having to, download the data and get all the information in. If you have any questions whatsoever, let us know, and we will absolutely address those as quickly as possible. I have my phone number if you want to send a text or give me a call if it's something that you need further explained. We can always reach out to Shannon as well and Jean to make sure that we have everything that you need to do the best job you can in reviewing these. And we want to be fair for everyone. So if you have any questions at all or any doubts about anything, don't hesitate. There are no stupid questions. That's for sure.
A quick note there, although the deadline is October 8th, certainly Brenda will appreciate getting any earlier scores so that people aren't rushing at the deadline.
Absolutely.
Oh, the earlier the better.
And I would send in a reminder email to those maybe within a week that didn't, just a reminder, don't forget, that these grants, so maybe we can fashion up an email to go out to everyone, just as a reminder. Sometimes things get, hectic and you forget when you get a lot of things.
Yeah, and all of a sudden September or October 8th is here and we're finished. So it'll be really good. Yeah. So we'll try to do that. Make sure we get
something major comes up that they didn't foresee. Please let Brenda, myself, or whoever know, so we can make arrangements maybe to move those grants to someone else.
Yeah, we're flexible because we know you're giving us your time and the program, your time. So we want to make sure that we have you taken care of in whatever way is necessary.
And we so appreciate everyone willing to score. Thanks.
Shannon and Brenda, this is Nathan. There's a question, how many grants do we have to score? Can y'all address that?
Well, what we normally do is everyone gets assigned 10. And that ensures that we have 3 reviewers, you see, for every 10. That's why we need so many reviewers. And so if by chance you cannot do 10, let us know. You can let me know. And if you can do more, let me know. Because we still have a few outstanding that we're going to really need to still pull in a few more reviewers. So if you have any problems, just send me an email, text, or give me a call. That's fine.
Okay, I guess that's the end. I have our emails up, our contact information. So if anyone needs to get in touch with us that way, I guess this is the end of our webinar. Thank you all for joining.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Can stop recording.